Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. My name is Sarah Khumalo, and I'm a host for Because It's There, a podcast that looks at leadership. Sir George Mallory was asked, why do you climb Everest? His answer, because it's there. It's a clever answer, but also something that we can ask ourselves. Why be a leader? Why be great? Why step out and make a difference? Because in spite everything, our insecurities, what's happening around the world, we are all leaders, we are all great, we are all capable of changing our world. And today I have none other than Sam, who is the CEO of Kids Heaven, a home that looks after street kids in Johannesburg, Benoni, and he's going to tell us all about it. And he's going to tell us about how he is changing his world one step at a time. Sam, how are you doing? And thank you for joining us on Because It's There.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here today to be chatting to you.
Fantastic. So I believe you're called Uncle Sam, So to break the ice, I'm going to start with that. Can Uncle Sam sing us his favorite children's lullaby, please?
Tula, tula, na, tula, tula, na, tula, tula. Tula, tula, na, tula, tula, na, tula, tula, na, tula, tula.
Whoa, I wasn't expecting that. You did say you were coughing. I don't know whether that was to throw me off, but amazing. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to actually chat to you today because I've got such a connection with Kids Heaven. It's part of my journey, it's a place that I found myself in a way. And I'm super excited to actually have, it in good hands with the man. Never mind. We always look at how men and fathers are leaving children, but there is a man that stood up and he's looking at no less than 500 children in all that are out there and that need the world to look after them. So thank you. What an honor and a privilege it is for me to have you on this podcast. And the podcast is all about children are our wealth. What do you understand by that? Children are our wealth. Can you tell us a little bit more about what comes to mind when I say that?
What actually comes to mind is that we actually need to, invest in the children's lives because they are actually our future. And if we are actually doing less, it actually means we are really destroying, the future. So I always have, that quote where the late Nelson Mandela always say, a nation that do not invest in children, it's deemed a doomed nation in the sense that we're not going to have a good future. So therefore, for me is to say, let's do what we can as responsible adults to make sure that our future is actually, well laid off for the future generation.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer and I absolutely love your take on that. So raising and caring of children goes beyond the physical nature. As adults and parents, as well as caregivers, we have to instill a value system that ensures that these children don't just survive, but they thrive in the world. It's a jungle out there, they say. Yeah. What do you appreciate the most about the value system that was instilled in you by your parents while growing up?
I was actually raised by my grandparents most of the time. And because my mom was, working far. So, but one key value that, they've actually instilled in me is to actually say hard work all the time. And also, treat everyone with dignity and respect, irrespective of their level of the position that they are in. So those are some of, the two values that got stuck to me. Because my grandparents were actually living that, and I'm still actually living that at Kids Haven, to say all children need to be, treated with dignity and respect, irrespective of, their past, where they're actually coming from in that. And also to say when they are here, if we put them in school, they actually need to work hard. Everything, doesn't actually fall from the sky. So, and I also want, children to see from me that, I work hard, so that they could actually see that. Thank you.
That's absolutely beautiful. Can you tell us about your journey to Kids Heaven? How did you get there? Is this like, this is what you've always wanted to do? Or, did you find yourself in this environment? When did you realize that working with at-risk youth, if I may call them that, was a calling for you in your life?
It started, I started my career as a teacher, but I was teaching grade 12, for 3 years while I was in Limpopo. I was one unique teacher who always wanted to deal with, the social reasons why the children did not do schoolwork, or social reasons, what were actually the underlying causes for the children not to do the schoolwork, to defy authority, not to listen. So I was more on, finding out, rather than actually thinking that the children do not want to do schoolwork. They actually rebel to teachers just because they are challenging, authority and power. So when I left Limpopo, coming to Gauteng, I arrived here, and then I started to, to work with children on the street, and also, vulnerable children in the community. And later on, one of my friends, connected me with Kids Haven, and that's how I actually came in, in 2001 at Kids Haven. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. Absolutely. The rest is history. And you're now the CEO of Kids Heaven. Congratulations. I did congratulate you a bit earlier. I feel so proud and privileged to have seen how you've grown within the organization and the passion you still carry for the next generation of children. So your process of getting to this place where you are passionate about children, passionate about what you do. They say that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. How did you make that shift from being a teacher to full-time, really looking after vulnerable children? Was this an emotional process? Was there a spiritual turnaround? I would like to understand that, because some of our viewers are probably going through that transition, and your story may be helpful to them.
I think for me, even when I was turning at that time, I didn't even realize that I'm actually turning. I only noticed when I was right inside to actually notice that I have actually turned, because like I'm saying, my humble beginnings was to actually go beyond helping someone else more than helping myself. Yes. So then taking it from there, I actually, just went on to make sure that I keep on actually, helping other people. It was a bit of, spiritual and psychological, in the sense that I'm a Christian. Yes. And, as a Christian, you can only be happy when your neighbor is happy. You can only be happy when your neighbor's children are actually being supported. So in that context, so I had to actually, start to work with children and their families. And when I started to discover street children on the street, and starting to go back to their families to say, what are the reasons for them to be, on the street? Discovering the push and the pull factors for street children was actually quite, fascinating for me, in the sense that I started to, to understand, the context of their families. And for me, that just made my, my work more easier and more understanding, more accommodating in that particular, instance. So like I said earlier, my shift was gradual, but at some point it just turned, 160 degrees, because it was just, very fast, especially, coming into doing reunification and noticing that the children need to be supported, they need to be mentored, they need to be, be having an adult, in their life space.
Absolutely. I like that. Every child deserves an adult in their life. I hope we all reflect on that as we look at the children that we put out into the world. So, Sam, I want to go back to something that I do. You know that I climb mountains. One of the key pillars, during any expedition are these guys that are called Sherpas. They are guides. So if you climb Everest, they help you and support you on your journey to the top of the world. And these Sherpas don't climb for you, but they look at your blind spots, they support you, they guide you all the way. And I equate it to even our spiritual lives or our careers. We all, at every point in time or our lives, need a Sherpa in our life. And I want to come back to you. Who did you come into contact with as a shaper? And, is it one? Is it many? How important is a shaper in your life?
I think for me, coming to work, at Kids Haven and having to meet my former director, Moira Simpson, was actually life-changing for me because she was just a real shepherd in the sense that I took a conscious decision to walk the journey with her. And at the same time, she also took a conscious decision to work with me and, fine-tune me and make sure that I get, well mentored, in the whole process. In particular, fighting for street children. And because whatever we were talking, it was more on, street children. So we have been through, difficult, challenging times where we need to force for government to, to accept the inclusion of street children in the Children's Act, because previously, before 2005, street children were not being considered as children in need of care and protection. So throughout the whole process where we were just, talking and talking and talking about street children. So I was consciously observing on how she does things, consciously observing on how, she interact with, any other person, out of Kids Haven and inside Kids Haven in the whole process. So she somehow, walked the journey, and I'm also, consciously moving in that particular direction. And I think I have a better understanding of the sector because of her. And I still think she had, played a very critical role, in my life.
Absolutely. It sounds like I have met her as well. She's quite a powerhouse. Sam, how are you using those learnings and that process to pass on, your shaper role to the people that are coming after you? Is that something that you value? Is that something that you're focusing on at all? And something that you encourage?
I think I've just, started as a CEO. But already, I'm already thinking to say, when I leave, what legacy would I want to leave in the organization? Because she had left a legacy, and she had left, a very bigger boots, for me to actually fit in. And already I'm saying, what do I need to do so that, I can start to mentor a cadre of, middle management team and other managing team that could actually, take over when I actually live in that particular instance. And the fact that, I have seen and I have learned from, Moira. So I'm already, in that space where I want, people to start to actually observe that. And I'm consciously going in that direction to encourage, the upcoming, team members to walk the journey with me. And I'm a team player so that, they could get positively influence in that particular instance, because it's a skill that I have learned and I need to actually pass on to, to the next people that are coming after me in that particular instance. And moreover, I'm also encouraging them to, to start to study and make sure that, they have knowledge and experience and actually skills in that particular instance. Because I remember, we went to a meeting, we met, one of the professors at University of Johannesburg, where the professor was talking to Moira to actually say, I want students that could, do masters, but I can't just get that kind of, student. And Moira was just saying, here is your student next to me. She just said, here is your student next to you. And since then, I've completed master's degree in distinction and dealing with, resilience on street children as a result of that, because I have lived, worked, and just, enjoyed the work.
Wow, well done. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, contextualizing Sam Mahopa's world, your world. From humble beginnings, you said from Limpopo, you joined Kids Heaven in 2001. First, as you said, you're reunification manager for families. You were developing programs for children and making sure you're reuniting them with their families. I would like to understand a little bit more about that. When you look back at those early years, and you look at where you are now, has there been any major changes in the trend of homelessness in the children around Gauteng and the country at large?
I have actually, seen so much of a trend, which is actually, from better to worse with regards to, homeless street children, because then drugs were actually quite, minimal. And now you have all homeless street children are now heavily on drugs. And you have, some systems actually falling apart and not actually, supporting them in that particular instance. Having very few rehabilitation centers to cater for homeless street children, and also having very limited rehab centers, in particular, those that are actually free paying, rehabilitation centers. So therefore, I think the life of a street child have, changed from bad to worse, in the sense that they quite neglected. They are just, treated as, as outcasts. And the very same, fight and war that we have been, waging to make sure that, they are being catered for, it looks like in some way it was exacerbated by drugs to be, worse where it is. More so, I think the inclusion of street children as children in need of care and protection in terms of the Children's Act, I think was a success in that particular instance, because before they were not catered for, but now they are being catered for. But there is a gap of, youth from the age of 18 to 25 that are actually, homeless, in that no one is actually doing anything, with regard to them. And as a result, where I am in Benoni, the rate of crime has gone up because, homeless young people need to feed their, their drugging behavior. And by feeding that, they actually, have to commit crime in that particular instance. So there isn't, enough system to actually, to help them and, and catch them, in higher numbers.
Yeah. When I remember my interactions with Kids Heaven in the beginning, you used to take street kids from the street, you bring them into the center, but you didn't force them to stay. You clothed them. I don't know if the system has changed now. They had the freedom to go or come back as they wished. Now, if you're saying there's a huge drug problem on the streets, are you not putting the children that are in their home at risk when you bring in such young people?
The introduction of the Children's Act of 2005, amended in 2007, which was implemented in 2010, actually said we no longer allow to, work with street children in such a way that we will allow them to come in and leave, willy-nilly in that particular instance. So we're no longer allowed to remove street children. We need to refer them to statutory organizations, which is Department of Social Development and, child welfare institutions or the police. So those are the three key, service providers that are actually, allowed to remove street children. So we no longer just bringing them in and allowing them to leave. What is actually happening now? If a street child is actually found on the street and we have built a relationship with them, we refer them to an outside agencies to remove them through the court order, and now they need to refer them to a rehabilitation center before they could actually come to us. So meaning that they will have a 12 to 13 weeks of a rehabilitation center somewhere else. And then once they are out of drugs, then they could, come to us in that particular instance. And then our intervention now is more on therapy, counseling, mentoring, support, and providing structure in that particular instance. So we no longer, just bringing them like we used to do, because the act is actually prohibiting us to do that, because we are classified as not qualifying people to remove street children in terms of the act.
Okay, that's interesting development. On a fun and maybe positive note, I'm sure there's been success stories. Can you share one or two of those success stories that you cherish the most at Kids Heaven?
We have, numerous success stories, but just to quote a few. Currently, we're having a young lady who is at University of Pretoria, who came in during the time of xenophobic attack in 2008. She's now finishing a degree in BCom law this year. And she's actually at University of Pretoria, and she's intending to do LLB next year. And we also have, just one young lady that we have, provided her with money to apply for a passport. She just completed a diploma with Tshwane University of Technology in Drama and Arts. So she's going to the US for 3 months, to do the gigs there, just to get, exposure there. So we just, proud. I think she's leaving in December for 3 months, gigs in that particular instance. And we also, have several, young people that are working and self-sufficient. One of them, I think, is working in a mine around here in Springs. She has done engineering. She's actually, working and living his own life, in that. And others are teaching. We have a young man around us who's actually owning a panel beater around us, who is now taking other young people in care that are not academically able to come and train them in panel beating. We have 3 beautiful young girls that are actually doing panel beating, because we're changing the perspective to say panel beating is meant for men. But there are ladies that are actually there, and they've been there for 4 to 5 months, and they're just going on and going on.
Absolutely. That is lovely. I mean, I recently, I think it's probably last year, saw one of your kids. I think I remember him. He was a differently abled child in a wheelchair when I used to visit Kids Heaven quite frequently. Now he was bodybuilding and so forth. He was in the newspaper, and I was so proud. I said, I know him, I'm very emotional. What are the chances? What are the probability for a child that is out there on the street for them to succeed without help? Do they have a chance?
There are no chance. Like I said, I've done research in, the resilience of former street children. A master's degree is more on resilience on former street children. One of my findings, in my research study is actually to say, they had one key relationship with a particular adult who was walking the journey with them. So on the street, they have no one to support them. It's survival, on it's survival of the fittest. They adopt to maladaptive behavior. And also the other key issue and that, actually, supported them was structure and routine, where they were actually saying the fact that we were removed from the street, we came back to care, and there was, sleeping time, eating time, going to school time, sports and recreation time, that creates stability mentally, emotionally, and physically. So that, motivated and mentored us to become the best that we can be. So how on earth do you actually, leave, children on the street to actually raise themselves? I mean, we have adults that need to play their adult role, and then children that need to be, protected. So there's no care and protection on the street. What they're actually exposed to is all vulnerabilities, and they're going to get into crime, they're going to get into prostitution, they're going to go into all sorts of things. And remember, a street child have learned survival. And also they've learned to become adult, but in a very maladaptive behavior. So there are no chances of a street child actually surviving. Zero, chance of survival on the street. So we need centers like us who would actually, work with them, provide them with skills, support them, mentor them, facilitate reunification, provide them with stability. And that's how, they would actually survive.
Absolutely. So, this is about children being our wealth. Just to remind the listeners, and I'm talking to Uncle Sam, we say that a lot of South African men are abandoning children. There is one that's looking at after over 500 children, and I'm honored and humbled to have him on this platform. So, Uncle Sam, as the managing director or CEO of Kids Heaven, what is your biggest aspiration as it applies to partnership with government as well as the private sector?
Having to have been at Kids Haven, I came to realize that the problems of child care and protection are way beyond, Kids Haven. Yeah. And I think my biggest, aspiration is to have, to play more of a bigger advocacy role, where you actually need to rally around all partners, in the sector to work together. For instance, Department of Home Affairs, we do have, a sizable number of children that are actually currently undocumented, that are actually in the center, that cannot go anywhere because they don't belong anywhere. They are actually undocumented. So even if you want to actually support them further, but they don't have a right to a name, they cannot, proceed and actually qualify to get the certificates and qualify, in that particular instance. And you also need, the partnership of, donors, government departments to provide resources in the form of, monetary resources, and also in terms of the, the skills transfer. You need community volunteers to come in, sacrifice their time, come in to, to play their part in societal, development. So therefore, a bigger advocacy role would actually say a particular government department would actually play their part. We will play their part. The society will play their part. Everybody else would actually play their part, and it will actually make a puzzle in the whole holistic development of children that are actually in need of care, or children that actually come through our space.
Absolutely. When we look at South Africa, we all are aware of the major challenges that we face in terms of domestic violence, which impacts women and children as well the most. What is your position, about healing the societal fracture, if I may call it that, especially as a Black man?
We have a high number of children that are actually, in our space, be it in the community, be it here, that do not actually have fathers. And as a result, these young men grow up not to know what does a good father looks like. And as a result, we have, programs that are actually, addressing the issue of men and boys. We run, dialogues in communities in terms of men and boys, and inviting speakers to come and talk to men, also to say, what are you doing as men to mentor, young people? Because a child who grow up without a man does not necessarily mean that there are no good men around in the neighborhood. There's no good uncle. So we rallying around, playing our part to make sure that we sensitize men on what best over and above their own families can they actually do to impact the society that they're actually quite in. And from where we are standing already, we have started the journey, and we are also running parenting program, of which I'm one key person who facilitate parenting programs. And most of the time, you come across so many ladies attending parenting program and men not coming in numbers, and it is always a question to say, but why do you have a man who need to render a parenting program? What does he actually know? But I always look at the beginning of the training and at the end of training, because they look at the perception is to say, we will see, what does he know? But at the end, they actually come back to say, tell us more. Why are you actually so much knowledgeable, in raising children? And I said, we have learned, we have seen children, and we are encouraging men, around in the community. And we also have, other programs where they encourage, family programs. We have one program that we have just recently introduced. We call it Lifechanging. So we have, the whole family, mom and dad and children coming together to a program. So we render, a holistic, program for 12 weeks, mother and father together, so that when we talk, everybody is actually on the same page. Because we just quite worried that the statistics in terms of, gender-based violence is actually increasing. And we also have programs on, girls dealing with their gender-based violence, because some girls also, they don't even see that they're actually being violated, by, other men. So we capacitating girls, capacitating men and boys, capacitating families. We're saying family strengthening is actually quite key in that. So we're already in that space playing a role in influencing the society around us to reduce, gender-based violence.
Yeah, thank you. That I like the holistic approach. I think you can't solve the problem in one environment or with one sector without the collective involvement. I love the approach, absolutely. So if we look around the world, the pandemic has affected everybody, governments, businesses. Surely it's posed several challenges, with regards to kids carrying out its mandate, which is to care and protect vulnerable children. How have you managed that thus far? What are the tactics that you put in place? Because I see you're not only surviving, you're thriving. What are you doing?
I always have a different perspective. I say COVID to us came as a blessing because we actually even now have introduced more programs that we didn't have before. COVID actually starts because we really got, into many communities that we were not there, prior to COVID. It came as a crisis. We responded to a crisis. And now we have established, around 350 food gardens, last year. And this year we have increased them to 410, food gardens. So it was a crisis. We responded to food security crisis, but we are actually now a shining star. And also the people who were, in lockdown, got an opportunity to look into their cupboards, their houses, what can they do to the society and all. So we happen to be the beneficiaries at that point in time because they were coming in to say, let me clean my garage, let me clean my cupboard, let me clean, everything. So donation increased, our, income actually increased, in the last financial year as a result of that particular crisis. But we're just quite concerned that, in the near future, because, of the dwindling, support base, companies closed, unemployment increasing, and we might actually, suffer a serious setback in terms of the inflow of the resources, and also, our care and protection of children could actually be, badly affected in that particular instance. And we just trying, what we can to make sure that we manage and salvage the resources. But it looks like our future is actually quite bleak. But also internally, we're lucky in the sense that we are a community, but we managed not to have many COVID cases in the sense that we totally, closed off the organization to the external community members, in that we were just, having children, protecting them, and not actually even having, letting, families to come in and visit them, in that point in time. And we just keeping on, sensitizing people to practice, COVID protocols. So far, so good. We only had, I think, one case of COVID case out of, 181, children. That for me is a blessing. But I always consider that, we're doing God's work and God is looking upon us. And there is a bigger hand above there that is actually saying, you're doing good and we will protect you in that instance.
Yeah. Wow. That is, it's really about a life of service. It's about not you, but the impact that we're able to make in the world. So let me go back to Kids Heaven, obviously founded by Moira in 1992. It's quite survived a few years. The organization wouldn't have survived, if I listen to you, without the collective effort of community, caregivers, volunteers, donors, and so forth. Is there something or anything you would like to say to these unsung heroes and heroines that have kept the organization afloat?
I always say it takes a collective for anything to be achieved. It's not actually one-man show. You need to have a cadre of, team around you. And we have so much, unsung heroes here, at Kids Heaven that have been here for over 25 years, 26 years, that are still here even up to now. And I call this profession of us the thankless profession, because you really get, thank you, but we keep on going on. What is it? The strength come because we together supporting each other. The moms that are actually here, they love the children, they care for the children, they are always having, good aspirations for them, and they are doing their best to make sure that they, protect, the children. the donor community around Gauteng, the donor community around, Benoni in particular, we can't do without them. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be where we are. We progressing, we're moving because the community around Benoni sees the good work that we are doing. We have just celebrated 29 years. Next year, we are having 30-year celebration. And we wish, we could actually be at our best to actually have a big bash, of celebrating our 3 decades, in existence, and having to have touched so many children's lives, having to have changed so many children's, life and all. So it's a collective effort of staff, donors, and all other, people that are actually, in the background to support us, coming with skills, setting their time, sacrificing their time to come and actually help Kids Heaven. It's one of, the rare times that you have people coming in and rallying behind you because you're fighting for a good cause.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what Ubuntu is about when we go back to basics, something that I'm passionate about. I am because you are.
Yes, yeah.
So to end off our interview, or our conversation, I'd like to ask your best challenge, and how it propelled you forward. What is your best challenge and how did it move you forward instead of taking you backwards?
Having to have seen so much of social disintegration in the society, the malfunctioning of, families, malfunctioning of, some societies actually propelled me to get more energy to actually keep on continuing. Because when I saw so many children being neglected by their dads in particular and their moms, best to let them actually see and look up to my journey and be the good role model in that. And also, I want to be the best parent that I could be to the children that actually I'm looking after. So for me is to say there is a gap. You as children you have been failed by other adults, but I'm not going to be one of those adults that will contribute towards you not trusting the world, not trusting adults. I want to show them, the difference. I want to expose them to the better part of the world so that, they could actually say we somehow were disadvantaged, but we got an opportunity to be supported. And here we are. We have seen the other side, because my belief is children need exposure for them to make the best decision. So the best decision to let them know what best men are all about there is for me to be the best role model for those children. So therefore, that for me, it's a key motivating factor for me to keep on going.
Wow, that is a good finish. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam Mahopa, the CEO of Kids Heaven. And today we touched on children being our wealth. Children are our wealth. Children are the future. And you're the living example of someone that's making sure that the future is secure. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, ma'am. Thank you for everything. And also for giving me this opportunity to, to have a chat. We always get, these rare opportunities to showcase and also share the knowledge and experience of our work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.